Well, good morning, everyone. On behalf of Citizens for Modern Transit, I'd like to welcome you to our quarterly Talking Transit event. My name is Hart Nelson, and I have the honor of chairing CMT. Today, we're going to be discussing the state of transit in St. Louis in 2023. I want to thank all of the CMT board members who have joined us this morning. I'd also like to thank CMT's Platinum and Gold sponsors, including AARP in St. Louis, Bi-State Development, the City of Belleville, Realtor Association of Southwestern Illinois, St. Clair County Transit District, Washington University in St. Louis, BJC Healthcare, Gonzalez Companies, Greater St. Louis Incorporated, HNTB, Missouri and Kansas Laborers District, and Ulico. We'd not be able to provide these updates without their support, so big thank you to those organizations. I also want to offer my thanks to everyone else who's joined us this morning. We're excited for you to be on the call today to highlight the trajectory of transit in the St. Louis region in 2023. Things are happening in the region around transit. And now I'm going to turn it over to our Executive Director, Kim Sella, to get the conversation underway. Thanks again for being with us this morning.
Thank you, Hart. Today, we have a lot to talk about. There really is a lot going on in the St. Louis region with regards to public transit. We're going to get updates on various transit projects currently underway in the region that many of you may not know about, including light rail expansion to Mid-America Airport, the North Side-South Side corridor plan with St. Louis City and St. Louis County, the secure platform plan, and Metro Transit's current operations. The discussion will feature a panel with Patrick Judge, principal of Gonzalez Companies and the project manager for the Illinois Light Rail Expansion Project, Talby Roach, the president and CEO of Bi-State Development on that North Side, South Side Light Rail study, Kevin Scott, the general manager of security for Bi-State Development and the lead on the secure platform plan, and Chuck Stewart, the executive director of Metro Transit, for an operations update on where we are today in the St. Louis region with public transit. We also have with us today East West Gateway Executive Director Jim Weil as a resource to answer any questions about funding as these projects move forward. These leaders are going to underscore that transit is in fact on the move in the St. Louis region in 2023. We know there are lots of questions about these projects and future projects. Please make sure to place your questions in the chat box or the Q&A box, and I will get to them as soon as possible. We're going to start by allowing our panelists to provide an overview of the projects that they are currently working on or currently have underway. We will then open it for questions. It'll be about 7 minutes for each panelist. They've all been warned, don't worry. So we're going to start with Patrick. Patrick, let's start with the expansion of light rail in Illinois. I think sometimes this project falls under the radar for people, and there has been significant movement over the last 6 months with regards to the expansion of light rail to Mid-America Airport. Can you provide us a brief overview of where the project is now and the timeline for moving forward?
Absolutely. Thank you, Kim. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let me get into sharing my screen here. Let's see. Can everyone see my screen? Can you see my presentation, Kim?
No, you are, it's still, we can't see your presentation.
Okay. Well, Travis, do you want to fire up a screen for me?
Sure thing.
Okay. All right. So thank you for the opportunity to be here, Kim. I really appreciate it. We're going to talk about the St. Clair County, the latest and greatest extension for the Metrolink system. Travis, if you could flip to the next slide, please. Just a quick recap of the overall Metrolink system. 46 miles, 38 passenger stations. The focus that we're going to spend on today is in the bottom right of this corner, which is in purple. And that's a 5-mile extension, basically, in St. Clair County. Next slide, please. So specifically to this project, it's 5.2 miles of light rail extension. And I'll show a graphic here in a second, basically extending the Metrolink system from the Shiloh Scott Station up around Scott Air Force Base, Mid-America Airport, and terminating there just outside of Mid-America Airport. It will include one new Metrolink passenger station at the airport near the parking lot out there. Also included in the project is a 5-mile bike trail extension that will run parallel to the Metrolink, which is great because it connects to several other miles throughout the Transit District's bike trail and Bi-State's bike trail system. Also included in the project is a 2.4-mile, we call it an access roadway between Reeder Road and Airport Boulevard. Essentially, it's an outer road which will help promote economic development in the area. And then we will have to extend Reeder Road south as well as part of the project in order to keep the Cardinal Creek Gate at Scott Air Force Base, which is their back gate, basically open. Next slide, please. Great. So this is an overall photo exhibit of the alignment. You can see in green, that is the actual Metrolink alignment. You can see in the bottom left of your screen where we are taking off from the terminus of the Shiloh Scott Station. We're running north and east around to Mid-America Airport. The blue line represents the bike trail that I just described a few minutes ago. The top middle of the screen, there's a red squiggly line there basically, and that is the extension of Reeder Road. We're actually building Reeder Road over our Metrolink project. So we're going to run underneath the Reeder Road extension. There will not be any at-grade crossings. The old Route 158, as you can see on the left side of your screen, we are actually putting in cul-de-sacs. So from a safety perspective and operational perspective, this is going to be a great situation for the system. Next slide. So some constraints that we're dealing with throughout the project. You can see the existing road network here that we have to be cognitive of as we're designing and building this. Next slide, please. We have runway clear zones. Next slide. And the accidental potential zones. So we have to make sure that we're coordinating and we're meeting code as it relates to any overhead obstacles that would be in the flight path, right, for the military base there. Things like overhead catenary systems for the electrical system for the train, as well as overhead utilities are features that we have to be cognitive of and conscious of as we're completing our design and working through our construction plans. Next slide. Existing roadway network, making sure that we're keeping the base entrance, as you can see at the bottom there, off old 158 there. We got to make sure we keep the base open during construction. Next slide. Again, more runway protection zones, and this one in particular deals with Mid-America Airport, again, as it relates to flight obstacles, overhead obstacles. Next. We have plenty of creeks, and we call these blue line creeks in engineering terms. So we have to get Corps of Engineers permits in order to cross these various drainage ways. So we've been running through and working through that process. Next slide. Endangered species habitat. So we're dealing with endangered species within the state of Illinois and the Corps of Engineers as well, and working through that permitting process. Next slide. Wetlands. We have plenty of wetlands to deal with out here. And so that it's not easy to build bridges and embankment through wetlands, right? And so we're working through the Corps of Engineers and Illinois Department of Natural Resources, Office of Water Resources, to go through the permitting process. Drainage concerns by the military base, Mid-America Airport have been in their forefront of their mind, and we got to make sure that we are not hurting the drainage conditions downstream and making them any worse. So we're working through that process. Next slide. And if you could click on the next slide, that would be great. So we have cultural sites. So we're dealing with Native American Indians and various tribes. We've been dealing with 12 Native American tribes. The Osage Indians in particular have been at the forefront and the most involved in this project. And so we're going to have a memorandum of agreement with several individual tribes, as well as the state of Illinois and Bi-State as part of the project in the transit district. Next slide. And you can click one more for me. So this shows basically where the train's going to run and land out at Mid-America Airport. So next slide. You could give me one more click. All right, thank you. So I mentioned environmental permitting, cultural resources issues. Again, I've already talked about the memorandum of agreement with the tribal nations. That's been going on for about 18 months, and we're getting close to signing that here in short order. Next slide. Status of construction. So we've already awarded tree removal and water crossing contract previously. That was bid out a few months ago. We also just opened bids on the facilities double track project, which has been conditionally awarded. We're waiting for the Illinois Department of Transportation to concur with that award, and we're expecting to issue a notice to proceed here in the next 30 days. Facility single track construction package is out for advertisement. We're going to have a bid opening for that in the next month. Systems, which is really the overhead catenary system, all the electrical components, signals, communications, rail, that's in final design. We're advertising for bids here this month, and we'll open up bids in the next several months. The access roadway, we're going to advertise for bids in March, and bike trail paving will be one of the last things that we do, and that advertisement will be in 2024. Next slide. DBE goals and outreach programs important. Although there's no federal funding in this project, we are setting DBE goals. We worked with IDOT Transit to establish those goals, and you can see them here in the various bid packages. Next slide. Finally here, DBE outreach program. We've had a strong outreach program. We've had contractor outreach meetings. We've had meet and greets where we've had open houses for DBE contractors and prime contractors, large contractors, to meet each other and try to network. We've also had several community outreach meetings at local NAACP chapters. We've mailed out over 500 letters to DBE qualified IDOT DBEs for the project. And of course, we're coordinating with various stakeholders. So that's it in a nutshell. Happy to answer any questions later, Kim, as they come up.
Great, Patrick, thank you so much for that update. And it really is exciting to see this project moving forward and potentially dirt moving early this spring. So we're really excited on this project. So now let's take a step and pivot. And Talby, we have potential dirt moving in Illinois. So where are we on the Missouri side with the north side, south side study? What is the city? Where does the city portion stand? What does the north side connection in St. Louis County look like? We're going to turn it over to you, Talby, to talk a little bit about that project.
Okay, good morning, everybody. And thanks, Pat. That was great. I'm going to try to move fast. So please, everybody, accept my apologies. I am going to move through some of these slides extremely fast in order to make our timeline. And this is normally a presentation that may take 30 or 40 minutes. I'm going to cut it way down, but really just kind of get to the basics. And the basics really are good news. As a matter of fact, Travis, could you go ahead to slide number 3 here? So very good. So what is the basis of essentially where we are right now? Right now, we are in alternatives analysis, and that is the engineering firm on this is AECOM, and everybody's going to be very familiar with what we have up on the screen right now, and that is the 2018 study and essentially the 2018 LPA. And this was an extremely valuable piece. What we're talking about is taking a lot of these assumptions and tuning them slightly, associated with, hey, let's be honest, the world has kind of changed underneath our feet since 2018. And one of the things that we're trying to do is look at this alignment and make it as competitive as possible to compete for federal dollars and to fulfill the obligations that we have to the public, both in the city and county, to develop light rail successfully. So we are looking at an alignment revision associated with the very valuable fundamentals from the 2018 study. Next slide, please. So we are calling that the Jefferson alignment. And the Jefferson alignment means that we would be moving the first phase of this in the city in a clean, simple, fast alignment that accesses our new investments, but also signals to the county that there is a viable light rail line expansion that makes sense for both the city and county. You know, it means that we would reduce travel times and that we would move to some of those prime corridors that we would access. Travis, could you go to slide 8, please? Yeah, we're going to really get moving here. So one of the cool things about an alignment like this is we need to make it competitive and therefore access the areas that are going to make us compete as far as our federal New Starts application is. And we do that by accessing some of the underserved neighborhoods in the city. Let's go to the next slide. And one of the evidence of that is, for instance, are we building in areas where we're seeing employment growth and also the employment density? This allows the scoring of the New Starts application to move up, and that makes us essentially more competitive when we get into looking at these corridors. So the simplicity of the Jefferson alignment accesses a lot of these corridors a lot more strongly. Next slide, please. And here is some really key evidence to that. What you're seeing is in the much darker corridors, we're talking about households that are accessed by this corridor who are in need of transit services. So both to the north and south of the city of St. Louis, the Jefferson alignment does this really as successfully as any alignment that we have looked at. Essentially, this is where our transit customers are. And one of the promises that we have out to the public in that successful tax Prop M tax measurement that we passed was to access these neighborhoods and provide services where we haven't provided them before. And we have a lot of ridership that is contained within these corridors. And obviously, these are areas of need. So it makes sense that we develop a project. And of course, a project will score very well when we can show that we are accessing these corridors. So very, very important aspect of bringing this corridor then forward to Washington, D.C. to see how it gets funded. Now let's pivot very quickly to what we're looking at in the county. So Travis, could we go ahead to keep going to slide 11? There we are. Very good. So one of the really neat things about the Jefferson alignment is then if you make that nice left turn and move out Natural Bridge, you naturally move out to this great corridor of targeting that the county is looking at right now, also with AECOM on an alternatives and analysis basis. One of the key parts of this corridor, as you see in the data right there, the population densities are strong. What's very important, what's called the transit modal share. If you look at that last percentage down there, 6.6, a percentage of transit modal share in this yellow area, that is one of the higher numbers, even across the country, believe it or not. It means that even no matter where the line is in that yellow corridor, it will score well as far as the federal government is concerned and how we're looking at these investments. Next slide, please. So let's look a little bit more specifically at those county corridors. Again, we're showing the transit modal share on the right, and then on the left, there's percentage of households without a vehicle. So indeed, again, even this corridor, especially in the corridor between West Florissant and right in the center of that, there's a really nice area of folks who are of need for transit services. We have a lot of bus routes out there. It makes sense that we access those people that are taking the bus right now. So let's go to the next slide, Travis. So also, let's look at the areas where we have promises. On the left, you have percent of minority population. And of course, on the right, you have population living right below the poverty line. So what this is telling us is this corridor makes sense for us to look at. St. Louis County is looking at all of these corridors with us, with AECOM, and we're looking at all the routes that will make sense within this corridor. And let's go to the next slide, which will be my last one, Kim. I'm watching the clock. Very good. So what are the factors where we'll look at these lines? Well, we're going to look at obviously equity, demographic, existing bus ridership. One of the things that we've done internally is I've shown this to our transit professionals and they've said, this is great. There's a lot of bus ridership up there. We can change a lot of those corridors and give folks really better service up in north. And then we want to look at a light rail compatible alignment, good transfer opportunities. And so the next phase will be obviously the county leaders looking at these alignments, but then going out to the public and soliciting factors of those individual alignments. And that alignment probably will be out, at least the considerations of those, really in the next couple of months. And that'll be up to St. Louis County. They'll take the lead on that. And we will go from there. So I know I threw a lot at everybody, but I want to stay on schedule and be ready to answer any questions. So that's it. Kim, back to you.
Thank you, Charlie. And, you know, we appreciate the fear of the moderator cutting you off. So thank you so much. So Kevin, we've talked about Illinois light rail expansion. We've talked about the future in the north side, south side this morning. Where are we right now on the secure platform plan, which could impact both of these future light rail projects as well as our current system? What is on the timeline on the release of those first concepts? If you can give us an update, that would be fantastic.
Sure. So good morning, everybody. And Kim, thanks for having us. For those folks participating that do not know, SPP, or the Secured Platform Plan, focuses on the gating, fencing, and closed circuit television implementation in all of the 38 existing MetroLink platforms, to include the new 39th platform, as we just spoke about at Mid-America Airport, coming online in the near future. So SPP is the acronym for this project. It's titled as one project, but you'll hear me say a couple of times over the next few minutes that it's actually going to be 38, 39 different projects. So we also know the magnitude and the importance of moving this forward and the region's expectation for a continual improvement of safety on MetroLink, the perception of safety, and a true security impact. And so this is a very important project that really we get one shot at doing correctly. And so we want to make sure that in doing that, that we've dotted the I's and we've crossed the T's, and we're doing everything to articulate that we are going to have through this project, through the fulfillment of this project, a true impact on security. So our SPP team right now, we compile monthly updates, which we disseminate to our leadership and the regional stakeholders. And if anyone's interested in receiving that, if they could just let us know, we'll be more than happy to add them to the list. And additionally, our internal bi-state development marketing and communications team, as well as our partnership with Vector Media, are handling all of the scheduling of SPP regional messaging engagements that we do. So we are not only moving the project forward, but we are also working toward making sure that our messaging to the region is consistent and is routine. Something else that I want to point out beyond the gating and the fencing and the cameras, and you'll hear me use CCTV. CCTV stands for closed circuit television. But new fare collection integration is also being included in this project, and that is being led by a separate team, Mr. Tom Curran, who is our Vice President of Administration here at Bi-State Development. The new fare collection system and the updates and the upgrades to a more modern, refined collection system will have to integrate with a new fare gating or security gating system, meaning you'll scan your phone or your ticket or your pass, and the system will read valid fare and the gates will release to let you access the platforms themselves. So one of the most important elements to overall security enhancements, and can't be dismissed in the SPP discussion, is closed circuit television and how important that is to complementing our efforts on a daily basis. Our ability to view live security prioritized camera feeds from across the system It's paramount to sound and proactive security. The changes being realized under this SPP project to include the cameras, the gating, and the fencing, and the fare collection technology, all of this will act in concert to support our security and our law enforcement personnel, as well as making our overall product safer. As part of SPP upgrading the camera technology and adding additional camera configuration to prioritize a security perspective is moving forward in a very expeditious manner. And the most visible accomplishment thus far in the closed circuit television program is the opening of a real-time camera center here at our Metro Transit Central facility on Spruce. And this is a significant pivot point in turning our CCTV program from reactive to proactive. And our real-time camera center is now operational 24/7, and we continue to improve that on a daily basis and continually add feeds and new technologies on a daily basis to the system itself. So we're very proud of where we are. This is the front porch to the overall implementation of secured platforms. In addition to that, all of those closed circuit television feeds have been fed into the 4 major public safety answering points in St. Clair County. So the emergency dispatchers have the same access to these videos that our own real-time camera center has. And we are working with the St. Louis County Police Department and the St. Louis City Police Department to do the same in both of their real-time camera centers. So moving forward to the actual engineering of SPP, there was a study done which completed a conceptual design level of each of the 38 platforms at about a 5% level. These completed studies were turned over to our current engineering firm, HNTB, when we retained them to move this project forward. As the HNTB engineers have worked through the drafting of a project design schedule and project management plan, we've solidified all of the agreements with the subcontractors supporting the overall design. We continue to do LiDAR, which is light detecting and ranging surveying at all of the different locations in preparation and complementing the design efforts. And we are actively investigating gating and fencing types, which will be presented to the SPP leadership team on February the 16th. HNTB will have to provide us with a report and assessment of what their recommendations are as far as gating and fencing moving forward. And we will continue to work in corresponding fashion with the fare collection side of this project, because at the end of the day, remember, everything has to meet in the middle and work in complete concert. So I want to talk about the totality of this project being 39 different stations, and all of the design and the surveying and all of the accompanying or complementing technology integration that has to be done. It is a very cumbersome process. And in order to correct the significance of this and all of the different working aspects of everything having to come together at the end, we are moving forward with a phasal approach, meaning if we treated this as one major project and we waited for all of these steps at all of these locations to take hold, we wouldn't realize actual construction until late 2025. And that's just not acceptable. So in order to correct this, we have acted, or we will continue to move this forward in a phasal approach as recommended by our engineering team. And this will expedite and allow a package 1, which will be 4 stations, to bid for construction in July of this year, July 2023. And those 4 initial stations that we've selected based on security and engineering recommendations are Emerson Park, JJK, Washington Park, and College. For procurement purposes, we wanted to keep the individual package locations consistent in one state or the other as much as possible. The initial package locations were chosen by our team because they present little need for reconcepting of design, and they offer a pathway to realize actual gating, fencing, and CCTV upgrade and reconfiguration that the public can see quickly. Now, an important point here is that although the completion of the first package will not initially be connected to the new fare collection technology, these locations will be moved forward and have a security impact through actually using security staffing at those locations. So what we're trying to do through this phasal or packaging approach, and this is my last point, I know this is a lot of information, is create a cascading effect. So beyond package one, we will design and construct what we believe to be 5 additional packages to complete the full build out, although modifications to that schedule are possible. Under our current projections, the final package will be bid for construction in September of 2024. This overall package schedule will create again a cascading effect, meaning as package one moves to bid construction, package number 2 will enter the final design process. As package 2 moves to bid for construction, package 3 will enter the final design process, and so on. And we are convinced that this will afford us the ability to take the fastest pathway to putting in gates, fencing, and cameras while remaining in consistent coordination with our overall fare collection integration, which is moving forward as well in a pretty expeditious manner. So I know that is a lot of information. If anybody would like to spend more time and have a more systematic overview of the plan, we'll be more than happy to do that. And I'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Kevin, very much. So now we've heard about the future. We've heard about the secure platform plan and its impact. Now we're going to welcome Chuck, the Chief Operating Officer at Bi-State Development. Let's chat about where we are right now from an operational perspective, Chuck. What does the result of the recent service reduction look like to right-sizing service with your available operators? And what does the next 6 months look like with regards to Metrobus service and connecting Metrolink service in the region? What are we looking at, Chuck?
All right, thank you, Kim. I'm going to share my screen, I hope. I think that's it. Does everybody see my screen? Okay.
Yes, you're good.
I'm good. All right, so I'm gonna, Pat and Talby and Kevin are talking about things that are in the future of our transit system in the region. And it's my job right now to make sure that we continue with the customer service objectives of our current system, including Metrobus, Metrolink, and Colorado. We are coming out of the pandemic, which has had a very, very significant impact on our operations. As you can see from this screen, this is our system performance for the first 6 months of this fiscal year. I know it's a busy slide. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail on any of the slides. I just want to point out a few things. As you can see from the first 2 rows, our system ridership is up. Year to date, it's up 5.2% for bus, 7% for Metrolink, and Colorado is having some issues, but we'll talk about that a little later. So the good news is that ridership is recovering from a very serious downturn during COVID. The issue that we are having in our system right now and covering that ridership is basically one thing, and that is staffing levels. And as you can see, we are down a number of operators, 204 operators. This again is as of December, 18 Metrolink operators, 79 Colorado operators, and overall about 44 mechanics and 14 electricians. As a result of this, this has seriously impacted the amount of service that we've been able to put on the street. And it's on the left side of the screen under status of operations. You see that we're missing trips, 2,500 trips in December for Metrobus, 2.5%. Metrolink actually missed 2 trips on December 25th, Christmas. This is not normal for us, but again, it was due to operator shortages. And you see over 16,000 denials on caller ride. Well, we had a service change in November. We reduced our service by about 7%, and that has actually resulted in our missed trips going down to 2.5% versus 6.1%. We're going to have another service change in March. We're going to tweak the system a little more, mainly changing the timing of routes, that kind of thing. And we're adding a new route in Illinois. As you can see, our ridership is going up. Our ability to provide the service is being impacted by our staffing levels. These are some of the things that we're doing in terms of attracting and retaining. A very comprehensive recruiting process going on. We have completely revamped our training programs. We were finding that we were losing a lot of new hires in training. So we're trying to fix that, to make more comprehensive, give people reasons to stay. Our board approved a $2.4 million package to enhance our benefits and at the company to keep people once we have them, retain the people we have, and make Bi-State a more attractive employer for new employees. We continue with our signing bonuses. We have a $2,000 signing bonus for new hires. We're continuing to pay out those bonuses. We have referral bonuses. So we are doing everything we can to enhance our ability to attract and retain. And anybody out there that's watching this, please send me people. Send me people. We need all the people we can get. This slide, I want to kind of put in perspective where we are now versus where we are. And looking to the right side of the screen, the fixed route ridership. Well, all of the lines at the top, that's 2019 and 2020, and we were doing, in some cases, 3 million riders a month. Right now, all the lines at the bottom indicate where we are now. The orange line is fiscal year 23 year to date. So as you can see, our ridership is significantly different than it was pre-pandemic. It is recovering, and we are trying to put in place the mechanisms we need to be able to service that recovery at this time. As comparison, in fiscal year 19, we had over 36.6 million riders, whereas in 21 we had 17.4, and in 22 18.5. So that shows the recovery, but we're a totally different system than we were pre-pandemic, and that is the battle that we are fighting moving forward. And we're gaining on it. We're gaining on it. This is more information about caller ride and VIA. As you can see, the caller ride numbers in terms of denials, 15,000, over 16,000 denials of one type or another during December. Again, this is a matter of not having appropriate staffing and a couple other things that have happened with caller ride, which I want to talk about next. And that would be that during the pandemic, we broadened our caller ride coverage. We had to service the need, okay? And we stretched our resources in order to serve that need. Legally, we're required to provide services within this 3/4 mile of our fixed routes. We expanded caller ride much further than that over the last few years. Now we're in a position where we need to bring that back in so that we can provide the services to the customers that are really in need of those type services. So that is an overview of my presentation for today. And again, like the others, I am available for questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Chuck. And thank you to all of our panelists. We know that transit is at a critical time right now and is really a critical component of the St. Louis transportation system and in the region. So we think it's really imperative that the public know what's happening, and we appreciate all of your transparency this morning on what is happening around 4 major projects around the transit system. So let's turn now to question and answer. We have quite a few people joining us on the webinar today. So as a reminder, please place your questions in the Q&A box or the chat box, and we will get to them as quickly as possible. So we do have some questions already that have come in for some of our panelists while we see if others have questions. First one, Pat, is going to go to you. So can you talk a little bit about the opportunity for the contractor community? I know you talked a little bit about some of the meetings you've already had set up. How many construction projects will there be overall on total for this project? And where can contractors find out more?
Sure. Okay, so what we've decided to do as part of this project, we look at this project as an overall economic engine for our region, right? I mean, it's a large project. And so rather than have this project go out as one large construction package where we may see a large international company come in and take the lead, we split this project up. There's actually 6 different bid packages as part of this project. 2 of them are already set, but that means there are 4 more opportunities. SIBA has been a great resource for us. So if there are local contractors, especially minority-owned DBE contractors, SIBA is a great place to reach out. Also, you can reach out to us through our website at Gonzalez Companies and express your interest. We're happy to try to network for any local or regional contractors. So again, I think big picture, look at this, we're looking at this as an economic opportunity for our region, and we want to give as many local and regional contractors the opportunity to prime these jobs so that they're in control of their own destiny. So that's where we're at. Again, if you go through our website, or if you want to send me an email, I'd be happy to answer any questions or put you in touch with the right people and try to connect the dots. So.
Thank you, Pat. So several questions have already come in about the north-south alignment. So one of the big questions that we're seeing, Talby, is where would this north side, south side expansion connect into the current system, and what would that look like?
Sure. So thank you. So at the northern part of the Jefferson alignment, you would make a left at Natural Bridge, and then going right out naturally to the county, you would then access, of course, right across the city-county border. There would be the communities of, let's say, Pine Lawn and Normandy, some very high ridership areas, okay? And then what actual corridor you would take from there is going to be, quite frankly, up to the community. So the connection point is there in general. And the maps that I bored everybody with this morning, though, are the criteria that help us make those selections, and then help us, of course, solicit to the federal government for the New Starts program is a 60% share from the federal government. So we got to come up with 40. We're on our way to doing that. Those economics look good, but having a good route selection is a key component.
Great. Thank you, Talby. So Chuck, this one is for you. As you talk about the need for more operators and how Metro is out soliciting new employees, operators, mechanics, what does that look like for the system if in fact, you are able to add 20, 50 operators? I think the last time I heard you speak, you said you're down 202 operators. If we can build up your operator workforce, what does that look like for service on the streets?
Well, first of all, it means increased reliability, okay? First of all, we need to be able to service the level of customers that we have now. A lot of our missed trips are a result of not having enough operators. So the first thing that the public will see will be increased reliability and better customer service. So that's number one. And after we get to that point, and we need a little reserve even after that before we can even consider adding additional services. Although our customer numbers are increasing, we're still a considerable way away from where we were in 2019. So we would begin to better accommodate our customer demand. You know, as we move forward and you start thinking about north side, south side, and some of these other enhancements as it relates to rail, that's a whole new component to the system. So we have to consider not only the near term, but the long term. Over the years, we've become more of a rail company than a bus company. Whole different equation there in terms of the need for operators on the various lines. So it's really a very significant turning point for us in Metro. We're considering microtransit. We're considering on-demand type service. It's kind of it's not all bad that we're where we are now, because it gives us a few minutes to look at the future and prepare for that adequately.
Okay, great. And it does look like if there is demand there, there's a comment in our chat box that if there is demand there, new service is coming. For example, there will be a new Metro bus line coming to Cahokia Heights, Sauget, and Dupo in March, because there is the demand and the need to help with that business park. So that when you talk about the service adjustments in March, could you just go into a little bit more detail, Chuck, of what that would include? It may not be service reductions that you're talking about.
No, it's not. It's not further reductions. It's a slight reduction, but it's more of a shifting, more of a, as we get more. So after our service change in November, we implemented everything, and then we had meetings with our operators. We actually brought them in and got their advice. You know, what kind of impact has this had on our customers? You know, what are you seeing? What changes do we need to make? So we listened to them, and we said, well, in March, maybe we need to tweak this a little bit. Maybe we need a little more service over here and maybe a little less over here. We can achieve that by changing the timing of the service, those kind of things. So it's not a major reduction. It's more a tweaking, more of matching the resources that we have with the demands of our customers.
Great. Thank you, Chuck. So Kevin, we're going to turn to you. You mentioned that camera access would be connected to county and city police departments. What does that look like specifically? And what is the protocol for police intervention?
Thanks. Well, obviously, the more eyes that we have from a security aspect on the system, the better. Having those live feeds in a proactive viewing fed into not only our own real-time camera center here at Metro, but also our partnering police agencies, really just is an overall complement to helping us respond to a very fluid customer base, right? Our system is continuously moving. We have to try to stay out in front of things as they move, or try to anticipate things before they happen. We have to use technology to complement what we're trying to achieve from a security standpoint. We would never be able to have enough people to cover every inch of the MetroLink alignment, or every bus for that matter. So what we've done is working with St. Clair County initially. Those live feeds have been pushed into their major police dispatching 911 centers over there, the 4 in St. Clair County. And we are working with right now the St. Louis County Police to do the same into their real-time camera centers. So obviously, the more coordination and collaboration and eyes on the system, the better. There will be times where there will be police intervention, and that is really specific to what we're dealing with. And as important as it is for the security elements on the system to be able to stay out in front of things, as equally important for our law enforcement partners who work the system to be able to stay out in front of things. And then the other thing that I'd like to suggest is, or let you know is that part of this overall camera upgrade will give us the ability to have live feeds on our buses and our trains as well. So not only our platforms and our properties, our transportation centers, but on the LRVs and on the buses as well. So this is a significant upgrade from a security standpoint. But again, the more professional eyes on the system, the better.
Great. So one more quick question for you, Kevin. You talked a little bit how the secure platform plan is now moving into a phased approach, and you're looking at 4 stations in Illinois first as you move this process forward. How can the public weigh in on this process? You know, we get lots of comments from riders that want to talk about the secure platform plan. Will there be an opportunity for the public to weigh in?
Yeah, there will, and we'll work with our communications and our media teams to make that happen as we move through this process. A lot of the work that's been done on SPP thus far has been building the foundation for moving the design forward. So as we move into this first package and we have some idea of what a gating system may mean, what that might look like, how that's going to integrate into the overall process. Our vision has always been to hold an open house in Illinois, to hold an open house in Missouri as an informational forum to the public, to have conversations about why it's necessary to do certain things from a security standpoint. Maybe it gives us more time to articulate on a one-on-one level the overall complexity of the complete integration of the process itself. So there's no question that there will be opportunities for us to have informational open houses regarding the project.
Okay, great. So pivoting again to north side, south side, there's lots of interest on north side, south side, totally. So when we look at this, what do you think the region needs to do to ensure the success of this project coming to fruition, in your opinion, as the CEO of the transit agency?
Well, let me just talk about the general excitement because it's definitely there. So one of the things that we're trying to do is move forward. Look, the public is understandably getting impatient with moving forward. We have a promise out to the public to get moving on this expansion. And so part of moving that Jefferson alignment up is so that we have an alignment that we feel that will compete very well in the federal government. But one of the really interesting things is, since the mayor's office has been really instrumental at pushing this project forward, and she's done so through a lot of meetings in Washington, D.C. with our partners at FTA and so on, is that there is now talk about this alignment. And as a matter of fact, we have drafted an MOU with the city that we'll be putting forward to engage in what's called a PMC contract, or project management consultant, to move the project forward. That'll be one of the large engineering firms, similar to, for instance, AECOM, HNTB, WSP, Jacobs, looking at actually designing this corridor. The reason why I tell this story is all 4 of those firms have been in contact with me and are interested in the project. And what that says is that this project is on the lips of folks in Washington, D.C., that it's a viable project, that this is something that makes sense. And so what that means is that we can gain momentum and push projects forward, and that it'll compete very well. And all that in conjunction with moving forward on a measured basis, taking AECOM's numbers when we get them in the spring, bringing them to the MPO, letting the MPO look at it, have the East-West Gateway Board take a look at it, and potentially move that to what our new LPA is. But of course, we got to get the numbers to do that first, get the engineers' estimates and the ridership. And so all of those are elements that help us gain momentum and push an alignment like this forward. I will tell you, we've done this before. One of the hardest parts normally is getting kind of consensus on a route. Look, that's difficult in our town as it is across the country. And in this case, with the Jefferson alignment, we have consensus and it's moving forward and the momentum is building. And I think it's a highly qualifying project.
Thanks, Toby. So we do have Jim Wild, the Executive Director of the MPO East West Gateway, with us this morning. Jim, could you talk a little bit about what the financial picture looks like right now at the federal level for a project like the North Side, South Side?
Yeah, so, north side, south side, as with the other MetroLink extensions on the Missouri side and even some of the early ones in Illinois, would probably be pursuing New Starts funding. That New Starts funding is in high demand. I don't know if I'd say it's oversubscribed, but what has traditionally, or what has been an 80-20 match, 80% federal funds for 20% local match, really has become more of a 50-50, or in some cases 60-40. So there is some competition for that funding. So in terms of all of the other money that's really coming down, the mega program, the infra program, those types of things, you could try to supplement pieces of MetroLink with that, but none of those, some of those aren't even, don't even allow for transit and light rail. And other ones that do is they'd have to be a component of a roadway project or a bridge project. So for example, if you were replacing a major bridge and including a piece of light rail on that track or whatever, it could be used to supplement some of that. So I don't know, even with all of the additional funding that came through with IIJA, I'm not sure that that really brightens the future for funding, but it does, at least it hasn't minimized it at all. So.
Okay, thank you. So we have a question, Chuck. What is Metro offering to attract new employees, such as operators? Is there anything new out there that people need to be aware of?
Well, in addition to the sign-on bonuses, the board approved an increase in starting wages for our new employees. That was sometime last year. They also approved a package that includes things like childcare benefits and elder care benefits and various things that will make Bi-State Metro a better place to work in general. In addition to that, we are currently in contract negotiations. We have completed our negotiations with IBEW. We have them signed up for another 4 years. There are increases in not only salaries, but enhancements in that contract that we hope will make our employees, will give them more incentive to come to work and work at the times that we need to work, them to work. So they seem to be satisfied by that. We're currently working with ATU Local 788, which represents our operators and our mechanics. And we're doing the same kind of thing. Their objectives, we have these meetings, these open forums, these listening sessions with our employees, and they tell us what their needs are. And one of the basic needs was a better quality of life, a better schedule. Okay, so we're working on those kind of things as we also work on salary increases, a good wage rate for operators and mechanics, as well as incentives to get them to work at the times we need them to work and do the work that we need them to do. So I think we're trying to move forward as a family. Everybody's involved. We want a partnership with our unions. We want them to reach a certain level of satisfaction so they can also be a part of helping us to attract and retain.
Thank you, Chuck. So there's a couple of questions for clarification on North Side, South Side. So would the north side, south side alignment be compatible with the current system? I believe we're speaking about the technology portion of that. The other question, and I think you mentioned this, but just for clarification, Toby, the connection at the north side, south side, would it or would it not be at Jefferson?
Yes, it would. So, and I answered some of this in the chat, so sorry about this, but I was throwing
Oh,
a lot
sorry.
of information. So sorry, everybody, if I glossed over, but there would be a major transfer station, correct, right at Jefferson Avenue. We have a maintenance facility right there at Ewing, right where red and blue line would transect the assumed Jefferson alignment. And of course, doing a major transfer there obviously is probably one of the more expensive pieces of this proposed alignment, but of course, very necessary and very common in transit systems to have major transfer sections, very efficient, good way to move around cities. Now, the actual equipment is much more likely to be kind of a low floor street running type equipment that we see really across the world, much more common than our current light rail equipment right now. And so the good thing about that is that we think we'll get a more competitive bid environment. You'll see these kind of low floor street running light rail vehicles really throughout the world. And they've garnered a lot of success in many other areas. And given that Jefferson, remember the Jefferson alignment, we have nearly 6 lanes of traffic, not nearly exactly 6, and sometimes more, all the way from Chippewa down to the south, all the way up to Natural Bridge to the north. So there's more than enough right of way to fit a reasonable alignment within there.
Great. So we have a couple of questions, and I think this could either go to Kevin or Talby. You know, questions about why is the region looking at a secure platform plan when we're seeing other cities turn to free fare? So that's really a policy question. So who would like to field that one?
Sure, I'll be happy to go ahead and take that. So,
Okay.
so really what we need to create a system that feels and reacts reasonably safe, and not only has people that not only feel safe, but feel comfortable on. And the public in general in the St. Louis area has been asking us to do that for many decades. And so one of the efforts, if we are challenged with getting back to those pre-pandemic ridership numbers, we need to be aggressive about those aspects and try to make people feel as safe and comfortable as possible. But all of this doesn't just involve policing. It also involves fundamental customer service and working on the community aspects. You know, one of the stories that I like to tell is, you know, one of the things about these camera assets and having a very good comprehensive relationship from a policing standpoint is that we got a notice from the City of St. Louis Police Department where they were looking for a gentleman, an elderly gentleman with Alzheimer's who was lost in the city and looking around. Well, we ended up spotting him at the Civic Center station. That's one of those good stories where policing and security efforts who have good relationships are using assets to service the community. The fact is that we need to build a transit system that has that service embedded in it, that is responsive to what the community is asking for in reasonable paradigms of safety and security, where it's not always police, but it's also just fundamental customer service in a layered system that makes sense and is reasonable within the paradigms that we're seeing not only here, but across the nation.
Thank you. So given the ongoing shortage of employees, what gives you hope, Chuck, that in the future, we're talking about this Metrolink extension, that you'll have enough operators to run a Metrolink extension, a new Metrolink extension?
Well, we've got a little time before we get there. And hopefully some of these incentives that we're talking about will kick in. Some of the things that I failed to mention, I talked about paid parental leave. We're also talking about child and elder care subsidies, tuition reimbursement, student loan subsidies, a wellness and advocacy center. One of the major difficulties we have with our team is communications, getting to the front lines and making sure that all of our employees, the face of Metro, the people that are on the line every day, understand some of the things that we're doing as a company. I think we'll get there. Things are starting to turn around. I think that we are implementing things that will attract and retain new people. Metrolink is actually a little easier. We need far fewer operators on Metrolink to carry a lot more people. So if that's the case, I think that we will certainly be able to meet the needs when that section of the system comes alive.
Great, thank you. So there is a question, and I'm not sure if we can't answer it today. It's definitely the subject of a potential new panel discussion, but what is being done by the city of St. Louis to support land use and zoning reform to prioritize these new and dense development around frequent and high capacity transit?
Well, I'll try. I mean,
I know Don Rowe is on this call, but he's not a panelist. So this might be a future panel discussion.
yeah, it'd be a great one. So we have recently had some really great wins associated with transit-oriented development, obviously on De Bolivar with the Expo development. Look, this is the kind of stuff where we're developing the city in these corridors with the kind of development that we want to see. And obviously, where's the one place that we expanded the system? It's in that Cortex corridor where we've seen some really positive. CMT was instrumental in moving that station forward. So those are the kind of developments where we're leveraging essentially transit assets to build the city that we want to. But there's no question in these corridors that I've shown, we're talking about rebuilding major pieces of the city and county. And I can tell you, we can build a light rail line, but it will not be successful unless we have parallel development that makes sense. We need rooftops next to these transit corridors. I don't care whether they're rooftops where people live or rooftops where people work, but the way to make these projects work is to have parallel policy developments that makes sense. And for instance, when you're soliciting for funds for these kind of developments and for federal support or so on, when you can show that transit connection, it makes the applications much stronger. And also from a market standpoint, it just makes a lot of sense. For instance, the Expo project, look, that's largely a completely private type, market rate apartments, supporting all of that great burgeoning economic activity in the central core of the city. Now let's try to push some of that in some of the areas where we have promises, in the areas of divestment. And I think that this strategy makes sense, but we have to be unified. And let me tell you, the mayor's office and Don Rowe himself, I know he understands these concepts. And they are great partners, and we intend to look at it that way.
Great, thank you. So a couple questions. I know we're getting close to the end of our time. One or two more questions. What does the timing look like for this federal funding? As the advocacy organization, we talk a lot about the fact that there have been some significant wins with regards to federal funding for public transit. So what does that timeline look like? Jim, do you want to jump in as the MPO and talk a little bit about that federal funding and what that timeline looks like and how that might impact any project coming out of the St. Louis region?
Yeah, sure, Kim. So once the LPA work or the revision of the LPA work is completed, Bi-State can enter into what's called the project development process. Now that's a 2-year process. It's where you really proof out everything, make sure you're meeting all the environmental requirements, all the design requirements. You have a solid design in place, a solid route in place. And then once you're, and that 2 years, although it sounds like a long time, does go very quickly. So you want to make sure you have all your ducks in a row before you even get into that process. Once that happens and you're approved, you can go into the new starts process where you're competing for that funding. So, we're talking from whenever this revised work that Talby talked about earlier is completed, another 2 to 3 years to be going after that funding. So, it's imperative that the work that's being done now be done as quickly as possible, but as thoroughly as possible so that it's not creating problems during that project development process.
Okay, great. So we are at 9:40, and I always like to end these panel discussions with one takeaway from each of you to our audience on what you believe will be the greatest impacts on creating this positive environment to move all of these projects forward. So what is your key takeaway that you hope the audience remembers from this morning? Pat, let's start with you on this light rail expansion to Mid-America Airport.
Sure. Key takeaways, I think, for us is one, we are moving Earth here in short order, which is great. We're well on our way. I think we have divided the project up so we can have local, regional participation for our economy, which I think is a good shot in the arm for the local economy. And again, if you're aware of any DBEs or minority contractors that would be interested, please encourage them to reach out. We can help them to have the opportunities to network here in short order.
Great. Thank you, Pat. So Chuck, let's go to you. We won't save you for last, Chuck. We're going to let you give a key takeaway this morning.
Well, I think the message that I would like to send is that this is an opportunity for Metro Transit. Okay, the pandemic has created a whole new world for us. We are at a point where we have time to really consider what the future of transit should look like in the St. Louis region. We have an opportunity to change some of the things that we've been doing for the last 25 years and move toward a future of better service to our community and our customers. And that is exactly what we are doing.
Thank you, Chuck. Jim, any takeaways from you as the leader of the MPO on where we are?
No, I think these are all great initiatives. I think they're going to do a lot for our community. I do think that the more we let this slip by, the tougher it's going to get in terms of competing for the funds, because 2 or 3 years from now, we're going to be coming to the close of IIJA, that authorizing legislation, and you're going to have a lot of people trying to enter that process. So I think we should try to make short order of this if possible, but be as thorough and complete as possible.
Great. Kevin, any takeaways on the project that you are leading?
Sure. So security is always evolving. There's no finish line to security. There will always be movement, reconfigurations on how we do things. But both in rail and in bus, we work very, very tirelessly on a daily basis to create as much visibility and fluidity with our security staff for customer engagement. There is a wide range of demands on our security team. And we will never be able to have enough staff, right, to put a security guard or on every bus or every LRV. So we have to come up with very innovative ways to create more visibility and more engagement. But what we're doing with the gating, with the fencing, with the cameras and other technologies that we're upgrading is we are complementing those overall efforts. You have to have things in your overall security structure that complement the efforts of your human resources.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. So final takeaway from the president and CEO of Bi-State Development, Talby.
Okay, so sure. Let's think about this. Essentially, transit is the bones of our city. The transit connections, the transportation of how we put our neighborhoods together, and how I'm hoping that we are working with our leadership, with the communities, is what are we building for St. Louis County, and Illinois and St. Clair County? What are we building for 2033? right? How do we envision the neighborhoods that we want to live in, the economic activity that we want to see? That is the challenge that we have. It's hard to answer those questions, very difficult. Also with how we compete for those funds. But that ambition is about making a better future. I think that we are trying to do that, but we need everybody's help. We need the help of leadership, and we need the help of the community. We need engagement. And so we're trying to do that and lead us in a good, positive way. I hope everybody has gained some ambition from this, because I think it's a really exciting time for transit in the greater St. Louis area. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Toby. I want to thank all of our panelists for joining us today, especially for your transparency on the projects you're working on. We are definitely looking for opportunities to be able to allow riders, residents, stakeholders to weigh in on all of these processes. So when those become available, please make sure we know. We are happy to push out that information and host as many virtual webinars or in person as possible to make sure that the general public in St. Louis has the opportunity to weigh in. I want to thank Hart for his leadership as the chair of the board of Citizens for Modern Transit and our staff today. We will have a recording of this event on our website by this afternoon. So if you have colleagues who would like to hear, or individuals who possibly missed it because they're at work, we want to make sure that they have this resource available, and we will post that on our website later on this afternoon. Take a look at some of our upcoming events. We have a transit transformation underway at the 5th and Missouri Station. The concepts are out. They have been designed by Trivers Architects. They're very exciting. Please weigh in on the designs. We have some other upcoming events. College Transit Challenge, 10-Toe will kick off in April. Day on the Trails, we're going to be promoting the Metro Bike Link in St. Clair County. Please also check out our social channels, as we will be talking about upcoming work and so much more. As a reminder, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't say this. If you're not a member of Citizens for Modern Transit, join us. Ensuring that transit moves forward in the St. Louis region is critical for the success of not only this region, but the state of Missouri. There's a lot going on at the legislature. We need your help. Weigh in with your elected officials and get on board transit. There's lots of opportunities to ride. Please look us up at cmt-stl.org. Thank you again to all of our panelists, and make it a great day.